Hey everybody, I'm Brian Rickman here, and this is I'm with Static Multimedia Network. And to kind of introduce ourselves, we work within the broadcast industry here in the United States, serving primarily community and educational organizations, but also commercial stations as well. We do a lot of programming and operations capabilities for a lot of these stations that are interested in streamlining their content creation and delivery. And we also kind of act as a bit of an incubator for innovative spaces when it comes to broadcasting, whether it be artificial intelligence, virtual immersive experiences, augmented reality, etc. And to make all of this happen, we utilize Liquidsoap, and in many cases, especially for community and university stations, we use Azuracast. In fact, one of the fun things about being on or involved in this chat is being able to see some folks whose names that I've only seen, like Romain and also Buster and Sherry and everybody else associated with Azuracast and Liquidsoap, and to kind of give you an idea of how we are utilizing these products and how it's, well, a lot of other options for playout in the United States. Among the most popular, like Wide Orbit, Next Gen, Playout One, they tend to be a bit too complicated for amateur and hobbyist radio uses. And Azuracast, for example, provides a very nice entry point, and it's a good introduction to Liquidsoap, where everything is already kind of done for you, as we all know. And users can easily get to know the programming language at their own pace, or in many cases allow it to just work in the background while they present their shows. Now, what I'm going to show you today via these slides, and there's quite a few here, but I will say we'll go through them very quickly. But this will give you kind of an idea of where radio is right now in the United States primarily, although the US is having to catch up as far as Europe goes when it comes to digital and everything else. But I think it's applicable across the board regardless. So now, okay, so, all right, and do I advance the next slide, or is that going to be on your end?
I'm going to make you presentator. I think.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay. Yeah, because I'll be able to plow through these a lot faster.
Yeah, you're presentator now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good deal. All right, well, with this data, we surveyed 69 U.S. public and commercial stations with an NTAB of about 27,000. You can see we did this last year. And all of these responses, for the most part, were collected online, weighted using Nielsen, which is what we measure ratings in the U.S. on, the 2023 market population data. And now this doesn't include all public and commercial radio listeners, of course. It's just a small sample from 70 or so of these stations. Now, jumping right in, what we can see is that the average age for a radio listener is, well, aging a lot, and aging out is what we would say in the industry. As we can see, the average age of a radio listener, a traditional radio listener, and I feel like this is also an important point to differentiate traditional radio versus new radio or a digital sort of radio. But for traditional radio, we can see that the age has gone from 61 all the way up to 64. So we're basically dealing with the greatest generation, I guess we would say, kind of aging out, i.e. dying, going away. And then the new generation, the boomers coming in, and then Gen X, etc. So, but this is more or less the natural process of things, and this has happened throughout radio's history. So this shouldn't be looked at as, primarily a new term, I guess I should say. But we're looking at most people in radio right now are communicating with boomers, followed by Gen X, then millennials. And you can see Gen Z is in there with a little bit of a zero. So we've got some work to do. Post-COVID recovery is the in-car listening. Obviously, when people weren't commuting to and from work, that went down quite severely. But it's slowly but steadily kind of evening out. And our vital signs overall are flat. Momentum is down. Radio's recommendation amongst your friends, where you would basically say, I heard this cool radio station the other day, that's way down. Alternative news sources, however, do look promising. Daily news podcasts, newsletters. Podcasting continues to be a bit of a mixed bag. It's growing in popularity, but it's also erosive to radio listening. A lot of podcast people won't be listening to radio on a regular basis if they've got their favorite podcasts lined up. In-car listening, again, has rebounded, but with other dashboard options and all the connected cars that are now going to be rolling out, Bluetooth really rules, and we'll see that here as we go along. There are, when it comes to, I had an interesting experience doing a study, a perceptual study for a market, where I sat down with a 20-something-year-old woman who said that she was listening to the radio about 2 hours a day, et cetera. And so when I sat down with her and I said, oh, great. Well, how many radios do you own? And she looked at me like I had sprouted antlers, she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, a radio. I mean, how many? She said, do you mean the appliance? Now that's telling. I mean, this is somebody that was in their 20s. And when they're referring to it as an appliance, like a refrigerator or an oven or anything like that, well, it's not necessarily going to be high on their target of choices when it comes to the media landscape. So we can see that just over half of millennials own a radio in their home. And bearing in mind, when this question is asked, we're asking people, what's available? Is it even there? Not necessarily do you use it. Is it even in the house? So we're seeing that traditional radio is starting to kind of phase out. But radio's core values are still alive and well. So in other words, there is still a desire for what it is that we do, whether that be introducing people to new music, but as we'll see, this slides down on the scale, but also providing new information. I'll leave all of these slides, by the way, will be able to be downloaded here shortly. So we won't go through all of this, but as we can see, more trustworthy and objective programming, is definitely, way up there. So people are looking for their bubbles of information where they can find it. Radio's local edge continues to be good. So when we're looking at, when you're forming your radio stations, it's very important, to really be focusing on your local area, because this is where we have an opportunity, community and hobbyist broadcasters, et cetera, to actually make a new or an inroads in that way. So the local edge is there. So that's important. Beyond that, right now, the main reason for listening to radio more is in the United States, the political climate. And as we could tell, most likely over here, between the whole Trump and Biden and the election and everything else, it's very contentious. And so right now, a lot of people are tuning into radio, hoping to find an unbiased source of information. But also worth noting here is available on multiple platforms. So that is vital for radio. we have to get off of FM and AM and move into digital, which is where, of course, all of us on this call most likely are looking toward anyway. Millennials and Gen Xers say they're listening to radio less to get a break from the news, which contradicts what we saw last time. And so we're going to see in this study, there are quite a few discrepancies as I go through. You'll see, and this is natural, by the way, when it comes to one generation passing the baton to another. Typically, these things will sort of roll out and work themselves out. But a quote here, one person saying that I find myself spending less time with public radio because I increasingly need a break from the news. So what they want from us, for the most part, and we'll get to it in specifics here, but what they want from us is some kind of either unbiased information source, or, to a degree, it can probably be part of one of those bubbles. If you want to do a left-wing, talk show or something like that, then maybe that probably fits. If you're going to do music, don't do top 40, don't do country, because that is, that's covered, nationwide. And so you'll want to focus on niches. I mean, when it comes to niche programming, that's really where radio needs to be. Now, the media pyramid right now, as you can see, the smartphone, obviously that rules it. 93%, everybody has got it. TV and video, 87%. Newspaper, interestingly, still hanging in there at 83%. As we all know, the print market is kind of, falling off. But AM and FM radio, though, to give you an idea, is right there alongside of it. So streaming audio, though, at 65%, that's also an increase year to year. And so, again, people are moving to streaming devices. Brand pyramids, this is actually very encouraging, because what this says is that although Netflix is one of the primary players as far as the media landscape goes in their house, the radio station, their favorite radio station, is also at the top of the list with the P1 radio stream at 47%. As far as what they listen to. And you can also notice here that when it comes to local television, there's not a ton in there. So, when do people listen? When are the most active listening times? Well, that's to and from work. It's typically in their car. Now, in the U.S., and it is different in Europe, in the U.S., they're hanging on to AM and FM radio as if their lives depended on it, because it does. So, when we have AM and FM radio, that is out there, that's available, they'll listen when they're in the car, when they're going to and from work, going to and from the store, whatever. But they're not going to be listening at home, and we're seeing that decrease quite a bit. Again, keep in mind, we're talking about traditional radio. We're not really into streaming just yet. So as we can see here, the digital line is flowing up and catching up with the traditional line. So the AM and FM listeners are there. As we can see, they're declining, but we can see right here as that the digital is really picking up the slack, as we go along. So we're starting to make that transition over. So now a lot of millennials and Gen Xers right now, as far as music sources or audiobooks or anything like that, they're plugging in their phones, and using the Bluetooth options if they have them in their cars. And so they'll be utilizing their smartphones over AM and FM radio. So that's interesting. It's good for us. It's not necessarily good for those of us that are on AM and FM, but it's good for those of us that are offering digital options. Broadcast radio does continue to dominate in-car listening, but I would almost bet that that's just out of necessity, as it's almost out of habit more than anything. And if we're not careful, we can definitely lose this. So, AM and FM radio should not be cocky as far as that is concerned, because this it continues to erode. As you can see, from 2008 to 2002, we go from 65% down to 59%, which isn't a terrible loss, but this is a steady, decline that we're seeing happen across the board. Among those who have connected systems, those that in the US anyway, they're only starting to roll these out in new cars. So, and again, in Europe, I believe in Europe, I know most of the, digital is, AM and FM is basically non-existent over there. We can see here that those that have these connected systems, they are joining things like Sirius and XM radio, but that has plateaued as well. So they have probably brought in as many people as they're going to. Mostly these people tend to be baby boomers. They tend to be AAA music fans. AAA, for those who don't know, is a format in the United States, which is basically a variety of music. It plays everything from R&B to alternative to, et cetera. It's more of a music fan's format. And, we'll get into the importance of that because more than 1 in 3 mobile device owners have downloaded their P1 station's app. P1 meaning their primary station. So they are downloading the apps, but I think we're all starting to experience kind of an app overload where everybody is starting to see, I've got an app for everything. Can't we just combine this into one thing? Which is where, services like TuneIn, before they started charging everybody a ridiculous amount of money to be on there. But that does point to the importance of the availability for an app like an iHeart Music or a TuneIn, but make it free. For real free. And, so there is an option for that because more and more people are starting to get sick of having to download all of these apps. So, the stream is obviously the most used, feature, but we can notice here that make a donation at 39% is up there. So, those that are looking for ways to monetize their streams, one of the primary ways that you can really funnel that money in now is through a donation. And people are willing to do it. We're seeing it more and more often on YouTube channels and things like that with people, making reference to their Patreon page and things like that. So, that, definitely should be an option if it's out there for you. Podcasts. Now, this is an area that radio has been dipping its foot into and dipping its foot out, for the most part. It's because radio, first of all, didn't jump on it quick enough because we really missed, the highlight of podcasting. So it's starting to taper off now is what we're starting to see. So, it will start to decline, but those that have found these podcasts that they enjoy listening to, they stay loyal to them. And what we find is that a lot of people are binge listening, much like they would binge watch. So if somebody finds a podcast that they enjoy that's got, say, 100 episodes, well, they're probably going to plow through those 100 episodes before they come back to you. So that's something to keep in mind. Podcasting is another way to reach people. But it has cooled considerably in the past 5 years. So, a lot of our friends that are out there like, I'm going to start a podcast. It's just me and a bunch of friends just talking, and people love it. People have found, no, that's not true. You really have to, provide a compelling and a good reason. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I gotcha. As far as the running late goes, 1 in 4 podcast listeners skip through those ads. So keep that in mind when you're looking at selling. Podcast hosts reading the ads. That is actually better than a pre-produced ad. So keep that in mind as well to make them more effective. more than 1/3 of weekly podcast users spend less time with radio, especially news talk. So as we start to see, when people are listening to other options, when they're given those options, they start to fade away from traditional media. So it does, have an opportunity for growth here. Smart speaker growth has stalled, but we really, all of us, need to be pushing for this as hard as possible, because we need smart speakers are replacing radios, appliances in houses. These smart speakers are becoming that new radio. So we want to encourage people to get those in their houses and encourage them to listen to us, because we can see about 40% are listening. About 1 in 5 smart speaker owners says that they spend more time listening to AM and FM radio if they have one. So now this is the part where we open up for discussion. For the most part, our listeners have more choices than ever before. And what we can see is that as this media landscape becomes more and more crowded, we really need to focus our efforts on niche marketing, really, promoting the smart speakers, and to evolve. I mean, radio overall, the last time we faced this kind of sea change, was television. I mean, that was the last time, and that was the 1940s. So, as we're seeing now, this is going to, severely impact radio landscape. People are already predicting in the United States that AM and FM radio stations will be a thing of the past within our lifetimes. And so, as that becomes, and as these owners become more financially strapped to be able to run these stations, they're going to be turning to AI. They're going to be turning to different automated services. As that happens, that's an opportunity for independent broadcasters to jump in again. The audience is rooting for us. They really want radio to survive, because most people really have an affection for what it is we do, and that's audio entertainment and audio information, and they are passionate about it. So, and they're upwardly mobile. All of them here are, we have people that make $75,000 per year that typically listen to the radio station. And these are, listeners that advertisers want. So if that's part of your game plan, you should definitely be focusing there. So, all right. So I think, and I like Sherry's comment there, the long live legacy media. I'm afraid not. It's pretty much over. I mean, but it's in the death knells, I would say. But I think, digital, this, presents a brilliant time for us right now. All right. There we go. We got through it.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's really funny that you're saying that as a conclusion, which is really oriented towards, I'd say, US-based big media corporations or whatever. Because Nicolas and Pierre were all and Alexis were all, talking about how we want to be able to share music, to tend to communities, to community content and local things. And you're saying pretty much the same. So I'm guessing that it's kind of on point.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, with Liquidsoap and AzuraCast, I mean, I think essentially what is needed is really an automation, a play-out system that will not only accommodate what Nicholas was talking about when it comes to video. And, when you could do like the early 2000s, late 90s MTV, as he said. And, that is really where radio is going to go as we look at VR experiences, AI or AR experiences, and incorporating all of this into one presentation. It's exciting. And right now, there is no playout system that can do all of that. And so...
And it's really hard
to get on that.
Yeah. It's hard because of the way the player, how we can play media is kind of
Mhm.
all based in browser now, and the fact that people usually don't log into many apps and stuff, and they are usually just getting their things from Facebook or TikTok or whatever big platforms. It really forces radio station or radio hobbyists to actually get on there, and you have to get there if you want to get known. So there's still this fight against the fight between do I want to have a lot of listeners, or do I want to tend to a local and nicer community, and then should I have Facebook page? Should I have a website and stuff like
Yeah,
that? And
yeah.
it's not so easy.
No, it's very true. And I mean, I think a lot of people are realizing as they've gotten into this hobby of radio and then decided, well, maybe I'll take this professionally. There is a lot more to it. I mean, you've got to, you do have to have a bit of a business acumen going into it, if in fact, this is what you want to do, if you want to make money doing it. But but at the same time, right now, it is so wide open. And people are, at least in the United States, are really bored, frankly, with the options that are out there. And, it definitely.
I think we have to make sure that Sherry can talk about another niche and local radio.
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.